Dobrý večer, dnešný program bude celý v angličtine, takže odteraz budem hovoriť po anglicky. All our friends from abroad, all local people, I would like to welcome you here in Kasárne, our really beautiful place that we are showing to all our visitors that what we can achieve in our city. Today we prepare 4 superstars of placemaking or planning cities or urban development. You can name any kind of discipline. We were able to lock and bring here like 4 super great people from all around the world. They are working all around the world. And they're finally in Košice. So finally world came to us. We don't have to travel all the time. So big distances. First of all, I have to thank you, all of you that you came in a super hot evening, in super hot summer. I'm really glad that there's still so many people who really like to hear about development of the city, or the future of the city, or any kind of hope for the city as Košice is. It's our home, and we love to see our home to be prosperous, to be somewhere on the map of Europe, to be part of normal world. Our partners who were really crucial to create this event are City of Košice, Creative Industry Košice, Technical University, and Košice region. I have to mention also especially 2 people. One is not here, and he's all the time instrumental in such events. Is Michal Hladký, director of Creative Industry Košice. He cannot be here because he's outside of the country. And I promised that I will do that. Mr. Hudec, professor from the Economic faculty from Technical University, he is the most crucial guy today because of his personal relationship, because of his passion for our city, he was able to bring such great people from all around the world to Košice. So we would like to thank you. And I promise that we won't be speaking too much, we people from Košice, because we want to give floor for so much time to our guests. But before that, I have to invite our deputy mayor, Marcel Giboda, from the city of Košice, to say some opening words for this event.
Thank you very much. Our moderator for the evening will be Mišo Hudák. I think everybody knows him as the one who wants to depart Slovakia with the whole Eastern Slovakia. But ladies and gentlemen, once again, welcome to the city of Košice. It's actually my 3rd time that I'm welcoming you to the city of Košice in the same day. So it's really unusual for me. I think everybody who lives in our city, and especially the people who are currently today present in this hall, are people who cherish our city and are people who want to have a better city to live in. People who like to go around the city, to stroll around the city, to cycle around the city, to live in our city. I myself, with my 2-year-old son, I'm the same example of that. And that's why we are doing this job with what we are doing. We want to improve actually the living space in which we live. I'm really glad, as Mišo described, our honorable guests, that we have this evening the possibility to introduce you to these superstars of the public spaces and how to deal with the cities. But I have to mention it again, as Mišo did. This wouldn't be possible without the contribution of Mr. Professor Otto Hudec. It's not an easy task to be the superstar in your own city, but I think from the contribution and the help that he's providing to our city, he's the one, and I want to thank him again, and please, one more round of applause for him. Today was full of information, especially for our guests, talks about the projects that the city wants to deliver to its citizens, the new city center, and other topics that we strive to improve in our city. One of the topics is the new city zoning plan, and as it was described on the beginning by our head of the bureau, Mr. Krop, one of the underlying structures for creating this new city zoning plan was the 15-minute city. I think it's something that it's really achievable in our city, and I'm really, really glad that we are here in the presence of Mr. Professor Moreno, who is the author of this idea, and we will deep dive into this thinking and into this thesis. Hopefully, our city in the future, and it's not the future for 5 years, 10 years, in the future will be more accessible for everybody on foot, on bicycle, and on public transport. And I know that we in the city are doing our best to deliver this for us, our citizens of the beautiful city of Košice. So let's enjoy this evening, and thank you very much that you came to the city.
Before first presentation, I would like to say that I was born and raised in the city. I love the city so much. And I sometimes when I'm talking with my friends who left the city and went to the better opportunities, options, or future, went to bigger cities, to much more richer cities, and cities that are much more like recognizable on a map of the Europe or the world, I'm always telling them, like, you got the money, but we got the soul. So I think this will be also presented here all the time. We spoke with Mr. Moreno, with Mr. Nijkamp, with Catherine about concept that we already have 15-minute city concept in Košice, but by car. So let's evolve. Let's start to see these cars as something which is nice to have when you are leaving the city and going somewhere to region. But to use in a city, we still can have our feet and bicycles and so on. And you will going to see and listen to so many approaches how it's possible. So nothing is impossible. We can do it, but we have to trust in that, and we need to hope for that. First presenter for the evening will be Peter Nijkamp, and we will stop you in a moment if you wish to.
Thank you very much for these words of welcome. What a beautiful day in Košice. If I were not satisfied with the place where I live, the city of Leiden, I would certainly like to move to Košice, a fantastic place. But I will start with a small anecdotal story. I was born in the eastern part of the country of the Netherlands, near the German border, in a small village. And my parents lived their whole life in a nice, beautiful village. But I moved to the western side of the country, the bigger cities, Rotterdam, Amsterdam, Leiden, The Hague. So when my mother was somewhat older, my father had already passed away, he said, well, maybe you should consider to, when I'm passing away, to live in this beautiful house in the village. And I said, Mama, thank you, but I will never live in a village. I will always live in a city. So that, in fact, has been the motto, and that is still the motto of my life. We live all, or most of the world population lives in a city. Whatever a city is, we can define all the borders of the city, but we live in the urban world and there's no way back. Košice belongs to that part of the urban world, and it plays an enormously important role also in the context of Slovakia. Even though Košice worldwide is not a big city, we have bigger cities, as we know. We have 10 million mega cities. The city of Beijing, for instance, has a population which is, well, not only bigger than the whole of Slovakia, but it is 4 times bigger as Slovakia. So the power of the city like Beijing is even, well, relatively at least 4 times as high as the whole of Slovakia, leave aside 100 times bigger maybe than Košice. But having said that, we all live and will continue to live in an urban world. Now, having said that, then of course the next question is, are we happy with the urban world? And why are we living in the urban world? And what I would like to do is to, today, in the 25 minutes or so I have, is to pave a little bit the road as a theoretical, scientific reflection on why are we living in cities. So also as to pave the road toward the follow-up speech by Carlos Moreno, where he will more or less articulate why certain models of the city would be very helpful to realize the goals of happy people in the city. So it brings us, in fact, to the question, why are we staying with the city? And the metaphor I would like to use today is a little bit of a challenging metaphor. And you see it here already on the screen. We love the city. We have sometimes hate-love relationships with the city. Sometimes we hate certain cities. But in most of the cases, we love the city. And all the people I've talked to today, many of them, and also the guided tour I've made in the city, everyone loves Košice. I didn't find anyone said, what a terrible city, I want to leave immediately, right? So, just in the way as you love a partner, we love cities. And that brought me to the metaphor of the analysis of city love as the basis for our understanding of cities, but also as the basis for our behavior in the city. So the city, of course, as you know, is not a set of buildings and streets, etc. This city is a human construct. It is made up at the end by the people, by its history, and of course by the beauty of its environment. And that brings me to the first challenging point. If we want to understand why people stay in the city, you can ask the question, why do you stay with your partner? It's the same. So what is love? And now I use the challenging metaphor. Love has several dimensions, but the 2 most important dimensions are you love a person because he or she is nicely looking, you love the body of a person. Second, you also love the spirit of a person, because only the body is not sufficient, so you also love the spirit, the mentality of a person. That's what we call the soul. So, to the same extent as we have a metaphor for what love deeply means, is the same for the city. We love the city because of the body of the city, the beautiful architecture, the museums, the parks, everything which makes the city a real beauty. But we also like the spirit in the city. A city which has no spirit, which is boring, we don't like. So it's the same, the soul of the city, the history, the culture in the city. It's exactly the same. So I use the metaphor of love also for our appreciation of the city. And that, of course, asks on the side of the research community, we are at the end from the academia, ask all of the question, can we measure this? Can we measure love? And I can tell you, yes, we can measure love. Later on we can have a debate also with you in the audience. Can we measure love? Yes, we can measure love. And that's in fact one of the challenging elements in my speech. We want to measure city love and compare, of course, cities in terms of the city love of the people. Now, there is in the recent literature, there is quite some discussion on what it all means, why we stay in the city. I start with an early contribution, Kevin Lynch. The urbanists among you certainly will know the work of Kevin Lynch, already in the 1960s, where he asked a very simple question, also a title of an article. What is a good city? And then he asked, what is a good city? Tell me, what is a good city? Now, that is already an important question. Barbara Ward, in another publication, The Home of Man, she said, the city has to provide a safe place for the people, the home of man, right? More recently, we have seen that this whole idea of why we love a city, etc., has been picked up in several disciplines. One of them is economics. Economics has traditionally been involved with utility maximization and GDP and income and investment, etc. But gradually, economists have also learned that it is important to look into the question, are people, even when they have a high income, are they happy? Because happiness is then a driver of economic behavior. And that has led to a new avalanche of literature, measurement of and analysis of happiness feelings in economics. Also in geography, and I cannot, the geography of happiness, I cannot refuse here to refer to the work of Richard Florida. I guess many of you will be familiar with his work on the creative class. But after he had finished all his work on the creative class, he looked into the question, yeah, but if everyone is creative and goes into the city, what does it mean for the city? Are the people happy in the city then? And he came to an interesting conclusion based on American findings and Canadian findings, namely that you do not find the most happy people in the biggest cities. If you compare New York with smaller sized cities like Pittsburgh, then the people in New York are in general less happy than the people in Pittsburgh. So you do not find the most happy people in the bigger cities, but more in the medium-sized cities. We have an atlas in the Netherlands, by the way, where we have exact information on the measurement of happiness per municipality. And what happens? The people in Amsterdam, Rotterdam, Utrecht, and The Hague, the bigger cities, are less happy than the people in medium-sized cities. And the place where I live, Leiden, is one of the most happy places in the country, and it shows, of course. So, in villages, you have also a lower level of happiness because people do not have access to all the amenities. So it means a rather logical conclusion, but that explains, of course, why there is so much discrepancy and disparity among happiness feelings and movements of people between cities and bigger cities, smaller cities, medium-sized towns, etc. I cannot resist mentioning one important contribution here from sociology. You see, in the past, sociology was often seen as a very soft science, dealing more with social philosophy than with hard modeling measurement. One person, if you look at Google, you can immediately find his name, Ruud Veenhoven, already in the 1980s, and we were working at the same university by then in Rotterdam. He said, as a sociologist, I want to measure happiness. And all the sociologists were laughing at him. You cannot measure happiness. But I want to. Now he is in his 80s, and he is the world guru in terms of the sociological measurement of happiness. There is the World Atlas of Happiness, which has been written by him, and you find his name all over the place. At very old age, at least, he was recognized as the grandfather of measurement of happiness in the social sciences. So that means that we are not just working on a hopeless undertaking. This is the new fashion. And so that also brings us into the question, city love and city happiness is something we can measure. And later on I will show you that we have indeed measured it in many countries, so it is possible. But under certain conditions, and at the end I will link my speech to Carlos Moreno's view also on what it means for city life. I make one more remark before going into the challenging task of measuring happiness in cities. I was talking about city love, the body and the soul. But some of you might say, well, listen, if I get married to a person, there is the body attractiveness, there is the soul attractiveness, but there is also more. If you get married to a person, you do not only marry the person, you marry the whole family. Whether you like it or not, it doesn't matter, but you get the whole family as a bonus, right? Yeah? And that is an important element. Now, that bonus, the social capital involved, essentially is also what we see in the city. The city has the spirit, it has the beautiful buildings, but it has also the social climate. The social climate where people meet, and so it is a community. And that, I think, is an important element to be considered, also because we cannot have close connections with everyone in the city. The city is a medium-sized city, but a bigger city, like London or Paris or whatever, you cannot be close friends with everyone in the city. You are selective. You choose your social capital. And you choose your social capital most of the time in the environment where you live. Of course, you may have family all over, but in most of the cases, the connectivity in a city is localized. It's not the whole city, part of the city. And that brings me to the motto, which I will use as a stepping stone also toward Carlos Moreno. In a way, even a big city, but wherever you live at the end in a village. The city is for you a village. You live in a certain district, in a neighborhood, in a local community. You know the people, but you do not know the whole city. So you have a localized environment, and that environment has an action radius which is not so big. And that, of course, determines the accessibility, it determines also the mobility pattern that says your daily life is a neighborhood life. And that brings me to the motto, the city is the village. And so if we want to measure city love, why do we stay in the city? We have to look into the locality, into the neighborhood, the local community. And so what we have to do now, and that's the research challenge, that's our task on our side, after building up this philosophical interpretation of the city, we have to measure it. In the presentation here, I will use the example of Rotterdam as an empirical case where we were able to measure city love for the city of Rotterdam. Now, just a small historical note. Some of you may know that Rotterdam is the biggest port city in Europe, and apart from Singapore and the biggest port city in the world, so very much determined by water and international accessibility. Rotterdam was bombed in the beginning of the Second World War, the first few days, because the Germans wanted to have a quick surrender of the UK and France, making a pathway through the Netherlands. That did not work out very well, and then to have a forced surrender, they bombed the whole inner city of Rotterdam. Rotterdam had an inner city which was almost comparable to Amsterdam. Those of you who have been in Amsterdam know Amsterdam. Rotterdam was more or less the same. It was completely wiped out. Nothing was left. After the war, they rebuilt the city in a very modern style. They didn't want to be remembered of the past. We built an American skyscraper city. And Rotterdam is nowadays the skyscraper city next to Frankfurt in Europe. So they have a totally different perspective on what the city should mean. And now the question is, do people like their city? More specifically, if the city is essentially a village, can we look into neighborhoods and find out where do we find the happy people in which neighborhoods? And then, of course, we have to look into the body, the soul, and the social capital or the community, these three elements in each of the neighborhoods. So that's the research task. Simple as it is. Not so simple, by the way, because you need an enormous database for all the neighborhoods, some 80 neighborhoods in the city, and you have to know what the data, objective data, and we have all the open OSM, OpenStreetMap data for the whole city, so we know it for all the buildings. We have to know, of course, how people feel about it, so that's the soul set of variables. And on top of it, we have to know the community feelings, and at the end of the day, also want to know whether people are happy in the place, in fact, the village in the city, the neighborhood in the city where they live. So the idea is simple. Reality is not so easy. But we are very lucky that the city of Rotterdam has, over the years, collected tons of data, objective data, statistical data, perception data, satisfaction data, also happiness data. So that was for us an interesting idea. And so together with Umut Turk, also here present over there, and Karima Kourtit and a few others, we have been working on getting this database in a standardized and coherent way, looking into the question, how can we explain the degree of happiness and love in each of the neighborhoods, and the city is the village, each of the villages, the neighborhoods in the city. That was a very interesting endeavor, and here I will just show you. This is Rotterdam, this is the big river going through the city. Here is Rotterdam, the north part, here is the southern part. The river is separating the north and the south. Does it make a difference? I'll tell you what. There's a metro system starting from here, going all over the city. There's a center going to the southern part here. It's 7 miles. 7 miles. And if you look into the demography, if you take the metro, you go 7 miles south, you know, each mile you go down, the life expectancy is going down with 1 year. If you are born, if you live in the northern part here, the luxury, wealthy part, compared to when you are living and were born here in this poor, multicultural part, on the southern part, it makes a difference of 7 years life expectancy. Every mile you go down with the metro, it means where you were born, where you were living, etc. It means 1 year less life expectancy. So you may assume that, of course, this is reflected in urban love and happiness. The city is the village. Rotterdam is a big city, but it's composed of socio-economic, ethnic villages. And so what we had to do is to map out, at the end of the following question, how much is happiness and city love at neighborhood level, the village, determined by all the background factors. And so that's a normal statistical regression model, etc., etc. I'm not going to bore you with all the statistics, but that's an important element to be tested. But now we get closer, and we found out that indeed there are significant differences, the northern part, the southern part, in terms of city love, etc. The southern part, if people want to leave, they want to leave, but sometimes they cannot leave, they have no money, etc. The northern part is the establishment, etc. Big differences in city love. Now you would say, well, then we have all these clusters. You might even say, well, this could be a 10-minute cluster, a 15-minute cluster. Each of the neighborhood is a cluster because you are mainly linked in terms of activity rates to your neighborhood. And whether it is 10 minutes or 12 minutes or 15 minutes, it doesn't matter, but that is more or less the morphology of the city. But there is another question, and that's also where our work with Umut Turk here with us has been instrumental. Because if you don't like it, you would say, I will move to another district or another neighborhood if I have the money to pay for it. But people do not move so much. Some of you familiar with the international literature say this is the so-called Thibaut principle, so voting by feet. You do not wait until the new mayor of the city comes up with a new policy. You say, well, I do not want to wait, I just move. But people do not move. And why not? Why are people not moving? You could say, well, no money, no housing, etc. Yes. But there's another important element. And that's something we have to also consider in the context of a 15-minute city debate. Even when you live in a small village in the city, you can easily have access to other amenities in other neighborhoods. So in your own neighborhood, you could have a bakery shop and you can have a small supermarket, etc., etc. If you want to have more luxury goods, you just take your bicycle or the metro or whatever. Cars is not very feasible given the restrictions, but you can easily move to another district. So the action radius of 10 or 15 minute city mobility and accessibility can easily be surpassed because you can easily go to another neighborhood and buy whatever you want to have. And if you want to have high luxury goods, or maybe you want to go to a theater or the opera, you go to the center, etc. So the idea we got here is the happiness feelings in a certain village in the city is co-determined by the amenities in other villages around. For the statisticians amongst you, this is a matter of spatial autocorrelation. So we had to rebuild our database so as to make sure that we could analyze not only direct neighborhood effects within an action radius, but also the spatial spillover effects. So that has been a major analytical exercise, and that I think gave us a rather interesting mapping of the city love feelings of people. So we can measure city love. We know city love is not only determined by where you live, but also by the surroundings of where you live. But the three principles, the body, the soul, and the social community, in all cases still appear to be valid. So this has led us to several studies and applications. There's a conceptual model all of you who would like to have access to these slides, you can get all the slides, etc. We have all the databases, etc. And here we have all the maps and the types of also socioeconomic scenarios for the city. So gradually we have come to the conclusion that this whole concept of city love, urban happiness, neighborhood love, etc., can be a statistical solid underpinning for finding out what is an optimal action radius. And then we came to the conclusion, and we have had very interesting discussions with Carlos Moreno and Catherine Gall on this. The 15-minute city action radius is not essentially a given thing. It is the result out of the behavior and the city love feelings, and that determines the flexibility of people who might be willing to go somewhere else in the city, etc. So rather than having this as an exogenous given, we would argue the X-minute city idea means the X is unknown. It's the result of the human behavior. And if it is 10 minutes, let it be. If it is 20 minutes, we cannot change, let it be, etc. So we have tried to in the context of the 15-minute city idea, to reverse a little bit the argumentation, which I think gives us a very nice, interesting overview of what drives the people in a city. And having said this, I think I will more or less come to a conclusion. I could talk about it for hours and hours, but I know the chairman is also getting nervous. So I think I will stop here, and thank you very much for your attention.
I'm not a chairman, I'm not nervous. Thank you so much, Ms. Nijkamp, because I said, like, before your speech, they got the money, we got the soul, and you put it in the majority of your pictures. There was soul as an integral part of the city. Maybe you are familiar with information or maybe not. Happy City Index is a measurement scale all around the globe, and Košice was the happiest city in Slovakia and in the top 10 cities in Visegrad countries that we like to compare each other with the city. So it's not that bad. We just really start to love the city again and stop hate it. But we are not here because of me. We are here because the godfather of the 15-minute concept is here. So please, Mr. Moreno, floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you to Mr. Deputy Mayor for his very, very kind first welcome. And good evening, everyone. I will discuss on this concept, the 50-minute city and beyond. I will evoke with you today in Košice the power of proximities. Proximities as a leverage for changing our daily life, for changing radically our lifestyle, our work style. Indeed, the 15-minute city concept has become a very popular worldwide concept. However, I said very often that our real target is to increase our quality of life. Peter said to reach a state of happiness in a city. The question is not to count the number of minutes, 15, 10, 5, 30. I proposed the 50-minute city for the high-density zones, the 30-minute territory for medium and low-density zones. But in reality, we wanted to develop this radically change of our lifestyle for developing another shape of cities, for breaking out with 7 decades of long commutes, of lot of time spent for different uncomfortable transportation, for having a more vibrant neighborhood, and to access to more and more local services. I am very proud of this development of the 15-minute city, of the X-minute city, of the X-minute territory, of this happy polycentric proximity. This concept is today a worldwide topic in the research, in the different universities, academias, worldwide. We have in permanence a lot of different piece, text publications, books, in a lot of different languages. And I'm very proud of that because, in fact, this idea was the good idea in this particular moment when we need to develop the new paradigms for having a real sustainable future for cities. This is the name of the European program driving urban transitions, sustainable future for cities, created 2 years ago by the European Union in order to promote in all 27 European countries different collaborative projects, cities, academia, researchers, private sector, stakeholders, citizens, with 3 items. And the second item is the 50-minute city transition pathway. This is today the second call for proposals closed, and in a few months we will have the third call for proposals. Our colleagues of the Technical University of München, led by Benjamin Budner, have published recently, in May, this book, Mapping of 15-minute city practices. More than 100 of concrete experiences for transforming here and now our cities, focused on this change of paradigm. Our scientific piece introducing the 50-minute city, sustainability, resilience, and place identity in future post-pandemic cities, published in January 2021 with my team at Sorbonne University, has reached today 125,000 views and has over exceeded more than 1,000 quotes by our research colleagues. I'm neither urbanist nor architect. I am a mathematician and computer scientist. However, I have received a lot of different awards on urbanism and architecture. Nobody is perfect. But this award received in October 2022 by United Nations, UN Habitat, in charge of cities, is for me the best acknowledged because the Scroll of Honor received at this moment is not a Scroll of Honor for Carlos Moreno, but for this 15-minute city global initiative. This is not my award. This is the award of this worldwide community. A lot of people said when this concept has started to become so popular, Carlos, it is necessary to have a copyright, a patent, etc. I said, this is not the time for that. This is the time for the common good. This is the time for contributing with different ideas, with this concrete proposal, the happy proximity, for changing our urban and territorial life, for reaching more happiness in our cities and territories. And we need to transform this concept in a collective, a collaborative concept around the world. This concept should be self-sufficient for traveling around the world in order to contribute to generate a new narrative, a new common narrative for mayors, president of metropolises, local governance, public sector, economic, private sectors, citizen dwellers, and to generate a collaborative mobilization for having a sustainable urban development in order to reconcile sustainability and quality of life in this post-pandemic period. I want to pay tribute today because today is his birthday. 103 years old today, for my master, my friend, my spiritual intellectual guide, Edgar Morin. This is today, 8 July, his anniversary. 103 years old in a perfect, intellectual, a brilliant way. Edgar Morin, the French sociologist, is the father of complexity, the worldwide father of a systemic approach, the worldwide father of complexity for understanding these hard times. I discovered Edgar Morin when I was mathematician, computer scientist in 1984, a long time. And Edgar Morin said, we need to develop a multidimensional thinking. We need to develop an organizational and systemic thinking. It is impossible to develop an analytic way for understanding a global situation, because in a global situation we will find a lot of different systems, subsystems, lot of different interdependencies. The most important is not to understand a system by an analytic way. The most important point is to understand the links between the different systems. And Edgar Morin has totally right. I was totally passionate when I was 26 years old for his thought to develop a systemic way. And in face with this civilizational planetary threshold, in face with climate change, when the question is this humanity will be survived at the end of the 21st century? We will have a real habitability of cities and territories at the horizon 2050? We will have a real quality of life in our cities, in our territories at the horizon 2030, when the temperature has been continuing to increase month after month, week after week, day after day. In 2000, the Nobel Prize, Paul Crutzen and his colleague, Eugene Stormer, both have published this amazing piece, The Anthropocene. The Anthropocene was, in 2000, at the moment when internet will emerge. Is this theory for saying that we have a new geological era for humanity? This is not a real geological era. This is always the Holocene. But the Anthropocene is this period where humanity, by our daily activities, have developed our self-destructions of our environment, our biodiversity, our essential resources. 24 years ago, after this scientific piece wrote by Paul Jacob Crutzen and Eugene Stormer, the Anthropocene is today a reality, but the Anthropocene is overall an urban reality. In November 2023, we have over-exceeded 8 billion inhabitants on Earth. And unfortunately, we have over-exceeded the 420 ppm, the concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere. We will enter in a very dangerous zone provoked by humanity, by ourselves. This is the curve of, in the different continents, at the global of our demography. But this demography should be related to cities, given that cities are the place where live the majority of population. I like this digital map developed by my colleague Benjamin Hennings in Oxford University. This is the most precise digital map of the 21st century in the world. This is the mathematical anamorphosis with two variables. The density of populations correlated to the surface. This is the reality of our global world today. Cities overcrowded. Cities developed without a real urban planification. Cities that had been becoming the principal source of the loss of biodiversity, increase of temperature, and the scarcity of our main resources. This is the reality today of our planet. 75% more of European lives in cities. 84% in South America, 85% today in the USA. the reality is that the increase of temperature is totally uncontrolled. We have overexceeded 1.5 degrees Celsius, the increase of temperature today, when this was the limit defined by the Paris Agreement in 2015. The question today is not to have or not this increase of temperature, but how could we develop a radical strategy of mitigation, of adaptation in an urbanized world. This is the map of the European cities in 3D. In reality, our continent in Europe is more a continent linked by different cities than a continent of countries. In just 1 century, we had 3 empires. After a lot of different countries separated by the DDR that have disappeared. Today, the emergence of a lot of different recent countries, Slovakia is one of them, but cities for a long time have been existing. We need to be aware that our world is unsustainable. Our cities. The situation today is not only a question of temperatures, of the uncomfortable temperatures in cities. The question is the economical impact of climate change provoked in our different cities. Our colleagues of the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research recently in the Nature Review said $38 trillion is the economical impact each year by the damages by climate change. And the reduction of 18% of the usual business of the turnover is related to the impact of climate change. We have in all continents, from Katrina, and today this is the same situation in the same continent, with more and more increase. In Acapulco, this city was totally destroyed. $3.5 billion just for rebuilding Acapulco by the impact of the first Hurricane Otis, Category 5. In Dubai, just 1 month, 2 months ago, in 2 days, they had the equivalent of 1.5 years of rainfall. The impact today around the world are so important in the usual business. In reality, with the 50-minute city, with the 30-minute territory, with this happy proximity, we wanted to propose a radical response for this essential question. This is a question for mayors, for local governance, for citizen dwellers, for the economical sector, for private sector. In what kind of city do we want to live today? This is our reality today. I'm not the first scientist or thinker on those to evoke a humanistic way for our cities. We have, for 1 century, at the same time when cities have switched its model for becoming no more human cities but automotive cities, we had a lot of different proposals for reducing, for limiting this irrational way. At the center, Jane Jacobs, the source of our inspirations, the model of our battles. Edgar Morin as well, recently, my friend Jan Gall and others. Edgar Morin said in 2010, we need to promote at the same time a global world and intensive deglobalizations by local food, local craft, local shops, peri-urban markets, gardening, local and regional communities. 2010 in a really impressive text to the challenge of complexity. James Jacobs proposed the living city concept. James Jacobs said in one sentence the essential of this concept. A city is alive when anytime, anywhere, we have a multiplicity of choice without having a car dependency. This is the essence of the 50-minute city, 30-minute territory, the X-minute city or territory. To offer a new urban and territorial framework for creating a different relationship between the urban and territorial space and our useful time. In 1903, the German sociologist Giorgio Simmel wrote in his amazing book, 1903, Metropolitan and Mental Life, housing is not just a roof. Housing is not just a roof. Housing is not just four walls. Housing is well-being, inclusion, dignity, health, safety. To have a roof, a four walls, does not mean living in the city. In 2010, my friend, the Nobel Prize, Mohamed Yunus, published his impressive book, A World of 000. And he said, we need a world with a 000, zero carbon in face of climate change, zero poverty for transforming our economy, zero exclusion for having a real social impact. Recently, on Peter Nijkamp and Karima Kourtit, I had the chance to meet Paul Krugman, and with Catherine Gall, both four, we have developed this customization of the new economical geography, the nearshoring, for mixing with the world of 000, for reinventing this happy proximity, for reinventing this new economical geography of sustainable proximity. We have this regional science association shared by Karima with the incredible presence of Peter for proposing this way a new economic geography with this proximity for having cities with happiness, for smiling, for saying that the massification of automobile, of cars, should be finished as the predominant model. For saying that for almost 9 decades, we have accepted that cities were shaped by cars, by oil, by cement and concrete, by the skyscrapers, by this zonification, by the corporate business district, by the specialized zone for working, for living, for having cultural activities. We need to stop to change our paradigm. The Athens Chart in 1933, led by Le Corbusier, has established this shape of cities based on this zonification. Social housing overcrowded, motor highways, express highway, bridge, infrastructure for going faster and for going further. We have accepted in Europe, after the Second War, with the Marshall Plan, we have accepted to live in cities zonified, segmented, segregated, with this strong separation by the long distance, the long commute, the long time spent for joining one functions toward another functions, given that we need to use different infrastructures for each one, because the model was to develop infrastructures focused for a single functions, because this was the business model of the real estaters, and this was the business model of the automotive lobby and the fuel. A specialized district for working need more and more real estate investments. And the district for housing, the real estate investments, and the street, the expressway, the motor highway needs cars, oil, and this was the business model for 7 decades of cities. Car dependency, fossil fuels energies, real estate development faster, mass transportation in peak hours, and the consequences was the loss of our humanity in our cities, for living and working under a constant stress. In Paris, in Buenos Aires, in South America, in Asia, in Ulaanbaatar, the capital of the lowest density in the world, we have strictly the same model. This is not irrational. This was a business model with the concrete financial interest. In 1980, in Europe, we had the Brussels Declarations, the anti-Athens Chart, the powerful collective of architects and urbanists had wrote, we need to change the Athens Charter for promoting vibrant neighborhood, for including in each one of our neighborhood all the functions essential for our urban life. In 1980, but the influence of the financial lobbies of the real estate, of the fossil energy, of the automotive industries reduced by the silence the promoters of the Brussels Charter. This is today our revenge, because today this is no more a question for continuing to accept this business model for cities. We wanted to change radically this business model in Europe, in the USA, in North America, in South America, in all continents. This is the reason why I am very proud of this award of the UN Habitat. The 15-minute city has become a global movement for fostering, for spreading a new narrative available for the different actors of the city in the way of complexity developed by Edgar Morin. I went recently to the USA with Catherine Gall, and we met different colleagues, particularly the Illinois Institute of Technology, Argonne National Laboratory, and they have developed an amazing job for modelizing with the digital technologies, mathematics, geodata science, for quantifying the difficulty for accessing to the essential services within a short perimeter with a decarbonized mobility, for fighting against the urban segregation, the social exclusions. And the conclusion of that is in the 21st century, in the second decade, almost the beginning of the third decade, the question is not only to assess the economical inequities. The question is to refuse to accept the spatial injustice, the temporal injustice, because both are at the origin of the urban segregation in permanence in all cities, even in the most developed cities, and the temporal injustice at the origin of the social exclusion present in all cities, including in the most developed cities. This is our common enemy worldwide in cities and territories, the social vulnerability, economic inequalities, spatial injustice, temporal injustice. In the most beautiful city in the world, Paris, sorry for Košice. My city, I love Paris. This is my city. Unfortunately, we have been living this transformation with this social segregation and with this temporal exclusion. People work at the west of Paris. The isochrone for working, of course, have this difficulty for people that live in the east for spending more than 2 hours per day just for commuting. And the social housing is one of the most important sources of the urban segregation in Paris. It's totally unacceptable that in 2024, the social housing overcrowded in Paris is today concentrated in the northeast of Paris, 42.2%. And in the rich districts, in the west of Paris, where the buildings are totally dedicated for single functions, for hosting corporate offices, the rate is only 2.2%. 2.2% in the west, 42.2% in the northwest for the social housing. This is the concrete expression of this intensive social segregation in the most beautiful in the world. The consequence is, of course, this mobility. People should, this is the compulsory mobility for going from the east to west. In a daily commute, 1.2 million passengers per day for going from the east to the west. This is the case in a middle city in the south of France, in Toulouse. At the center of the city, all good, blue. 20 kilometers, 30 kilometers, so far away of the center, red. This is only for having a roof and 4 walls. This is Bogota, the capital of the country where I was born. The same situation. People, poor people, working people, live in the southwest, but the jobs are only in the northeast. Without education, without access to services, with the low income revenues, more than 2 hours just for going for a job, for accessing to medical services, etc. The consequence is this overcrowded transportation. In the mass transportation, the peak hours, worst, when people will take an individual car. This is the essence of the 50-minute city, a proximity for all, implementing an inclusive 50-minute city concept for a stronghold against segregation, not only for reducing our CO2 footprint with the low carbon mobility on foot or bike, but for creating more social interactions with the vibrant neighborhood and to develop a new urban economic model based in a relocalization of jobs, shorter circuits, more local employments, more local skills. For that, we have opened this amazing dialogue worldwide for transforming this concept in new practices in a global scale. The X-minute city, the X-minute territory is today the happy proximity, the happy polycentric proximity for reconciling ecology, economic, and social positive impact, for relocalizing jobs, for regenerating our CO2 emission by the low carbon mobility on foot or by bike, for reviving links by this regeneration of the social fabric. Our duty, our roadmap is to build an inclusive and healthy neighborhood, block by block, street by street. This is not a magic wand. This is not a magic dust. This is a roadmap for loving our neighbor, for developing this topophilia, for developing this happy love index. And this is totally possible. This is just a question to define a new urban policy, a new will commitment to develop this motto to reach a high quality societal life based on an access within a short perimeter to the essential needs and everyone, anytime, for everyone, anytime, anywhere in the way of Jane Jacobs. To have a house, to have a job, to have access to the shorter circuits, to the medical services, to educations, and to enjoy in the public spaces. In a polycentric organization, in a short, low carbon distances, not is a compulsory, but this is a choice. We have developed a mathematical ontological model. This is not the case for this. We wanted to mix our functions to transform our colors. Instead of to have the separated colors, we want to mix these colors in all city, anytime, anywhere. More accessibility to the service, more organic density, more mixed uses, more quality in the public spaces, more efficient public transportation, more active low carbon mobility, more inclusivity, more ubiquity. This is today the way for reconciling sustainability and quality of life, embraced by a lot of different mayors around the world, in the 5 continents, supported by the main international organizations of mayors of cities. This is the reason of the success of this idea, and this idea is no more an idea. This is no more a concept. This is today a reality fostered by the new post-pandemic events, in particular the transformation of jobs, the massification of the new technologies, and the attachment of citizen dwellers for living different, for mixed uses in proximity, for offering this new roadmap with the new methodologies, with the new development. Thank you so much.
That was plenty of information. Now I'm going to hand whole playground to the ladies, Karima Kourtit and Gall. It will be your rules, so it's up to you. We decided that Mr. Nijkamp and Mr. Moreno will join us on the stage. Please, gentlemen, join us. Would you like to have this microphone? It will be up to you. I'm disappearing.
Yeah, okay, that's fine, that's fine. Thank you so much. So, we will start with some questions. Of course, Peter Nijkamp and Carlos had give fantastic speeches, 2 beautiful presentations. So, Catherine and I will lead this session. Catherine, how should we do it? Shall we ask people? Okay. So we will not start asking questions to Carlos and Peter. We would like to get you involved because I have a lot of questions. Catherine has a lot of questions, but we are also curious about your thoughts and ideas. Did we forget something? Do you have some specific questions? There's the light here. I cannot see you very well. So I would like to invite you for some questions and sharing some thoughts with you. So who would like to say something? If not, I can go to a person. Okay. I had a very nice talk during the break, so I would like to invite, where is that person? Let me check. Otto. Please, do you have a specific question to Carlo or Peter, or do you have a very different questions to all of us? Very short and precise.
Sure. Can you hear me? Yes. My question, who dislikes the concept of 15-minute city? For example, the inhabitants of the city of Paris, where with Anne Hidalgo you started to implement the concept of 15-minute city. Are there people who dislike this concept? Because if you mentioned, Catherine, that it's quite a radical change for the cities. If there is a radical change, there must be people who dislike this concept. That's the question.
Okay. That's the question about like and disliking the concept. But as Carlos mentioned, it's not about the minutes. It's about the concept, the idea, how can we use that to achieve some goals like sustainability, healthy cities, etc. So, Carlos, can you reply on this? It's not about dislike or like.
What is the question?
Disliking the 15-minute city, is that something that can you pinpoint that in minutes? You mentioned that it's not about the minutes. Can you hear us?
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay. Can you reply very short on that, please?
The 15 minutes, and shortly, the 15-minute city is a concept based on this transformation concretely of our daily life for offering more local services in proximity. This concept is, regardless of the size of density or even the cultural, economical, social, political context. This concept is present in Paris, in Milano, and Roma, for example, big cities, but it is present in ruralities. In Poland, in Pleszowa, this is a small city, 15,000 inhabitants. It is present in Africa, in Tunisia, in Sousse, a middle city, 400,000 inhabitants. We have a lot of different ways for implementing this concept. The most important point is to offer a roadmap for increasing the quality of life, local medical services, cultural activities, educational activities, use of public spaces, social mixity, mix of the users by capability, while capability. This is available for all kind of city, big or small, anywhere.
Thank you, Carlos. Catherine.
You can ask question in Slovakian and.
Any question?
Hi. I'm sorry?
Yes, there is a person.
Oh, thank you.
Shall I? I will walk to the person. No.
My name is Tomáš Sobota. I'm an architect since 1998. I'm living in central Slovakia, born there, Banská Bystrica, city of 70,000 people. I'm a member of city parliament and a member of region parliament. I have as years go, I see what is killing our traffic and what is getting more and more traffic into our cities. I think these are suburbs, like something we do the same fault the Americans did 100 years ago. And the second thing I want to ask you, I see it's such a practical question. We already have a law. The parents can put the children into any school in the city or another city they want. Do you think that we are able to use some law regulation to get the people let the children in the nearest school? Because I think in the past, in the communism, we had some data which must be used in the urbanism to saturate such a functions, in the local. So before, maybe we had some regulation to set up a 15-minute city, but already we lost it. Do you think we could use a local law to the people must do something to get a result in the 15-minute city? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I, Peter, and then Carlos, perhaps?
Let me first begin with a positive remark. In discussing the 15-minute city idea, we should not neglect that the automobile era has brought many good things. It has created less isolation. It has created many opportunities for people all over the world. And in just discussing this, I think we ought to appreciate that we ought to redress the negative externalities without, in fact, taking away also the positive things. Societies, communities all over the world would have not been flourishing if there would not have been automobile technology. But nowadays we appreciate that climate change forces us to do different things. And we have to be intelligent to combine the good things of mobility and accessibility with also the need for human happiness, well-being, quality of life in cities. I think the example you gave, that was your next question, on whether one should forbid people or parents to send their children to schools far away. I think then you touch a very important, sensitive issue, because it has to do with the freedom of choice for your children. And then one really ought to think it over whether this is a good model. There might be totally other models which could also be experimented, like school buses and many other things. So we ought to be very intelligent and not to be too dictatorial in imposing things, because we might lose at the end also the good spirit. What I have appreciated from Carlos Moreno's speech is essentially mobility accessibility is not the issue, that's an instrument. What we want to achieve is a high level of quality of life, of sustainability, of happiness. I would call it city love, but that's just a matter of taste. And all the other things are instrumental in order to achieve these higher order goals. And these higher order goals are very human and very general. As some of you may be familiar with Maslow's pyramid. The human needs are rather straightforward. Everyone wants to be safe, everyone wants to have a shelter, and everyone wants to have some good opportunities. And within that broader framework of the pyramid of human needs, I think we have to position also the discussion on 15-minute cities. And there are many creative options, by the way, and that is, I think, something to be discussed also further with you.
Carlos?
Oh, it's very clear, the answer of Peter.
Okay, thank you. I think we have many questions, but this session is about cities for people. If we look at the presentation of Carlos Moreno, the 15-minute city, make things accessible, especially the desire and needs for particular basic services in the context of mass love, and Peter with city love. Can you help me here to understand more cities for people, or is it cities and people? Who would like to help me? Mister. Can you please help me about the theme of this session is cities for people. Carlos was talking about accessibility of basic services, and Peter, city love. Do we have to think about cities for people or cities and people? Oh, okay.
Sorry, city for people.
Very concrete and short, because I think there are more questions.
For peoples is absolutely, and I think about what is this concrete? 50 minutes city is a very short is a very short space, but what is for me a nice city I think it's very important is unhealthy, is a city with safety. It's very important what I think we discussed and I think it's a for the people. It's also very important the perspective. Sometimes more cities have not perspective for the future. I think so.
Thank you. Catherine? Okay. 1 second, please. Catherine, who's, because I cannot see it because of the light. Who? Okay. Yes, please.
No, volám sa Arina. Rada by som sa chcela spýtať týchto dvoch pánov prednášajúcich. Rozprávali o Anglicku, o Francúzsku, o Amerike. Prišli do Košic s tým, že tu má byť 15-minútové mesto, ale o Košiciach sa nezmienili ani jediným slovíčkom, ako to má vyzerať, čo sa tu má robiť, ako sa to má zriadiť, či majú byť také obvody, ako to vlastne má predbiehať v Košiciach. O tom nepovedali ani jedno slovo.
Catherine? Catherine, you use the translator. Can you please help here?
Yes. Okay. She's asking why we didn't speak about Košice.
Okay.
That we presented examples from all over the world.
Yeah, so the idea here was to share more our experience, and then we have the questions, this session, to get also your experience and your ideas to share with us, of course. That's the idea of this session.
Viete čo, my sme na suverenom Slovensku bývame, my sme slobodní ľudia a nemyslím si, že by to bolo seriózne, že by sme boli po takých obvodoch a neviem čo. My ideme s radosťou do mesta, tešíme sa, nemáme žiadne obmedzenia, ako dlho sa môžeme kde zdržiavať a neviem, či by to bolo seriózne. Myslím si, že každý z nás je tu šťastný. Čo je tvoj? To je múdry.
Ja by som rada počula aj o negatívach, lebo žijeme vo svete duality, pekný, škaredý, zlý, dobrý, čiže aj ten projekt musí mať aj nejaké negatíva. Či len je všetko krásne, slnkom osvietené, alebo to bude ako kreditný systém, ako v Číne a budeme zatvorení vo svojich obvodoch? Lebo my sme tu spokojní. Ja som šťastná. Ja žijem skvelý život a som rada, keď môžem ísť do inej časti mesta. Mestská doprava mi vôbec nevadí. Nemám auto. Som spokojná. nepoužívam zdieľané veci, mám prácu, mám svoj byt a na vidieku preto nežijem, lebo nemám na to. Pretože za 30 rokov sme schudobneli na kosť na Slovensku.
Okay. Thank you for your comments. Okay.
Takže ešte môžem? Takže toto je asi prvé kolo náboru ľudí do 15-minútových mestečiek, odkiaľ nebude možné bez povolenia vychádzať či niekam cestovať. Bude to mať väzbu. No tak to ja vidím, že to bude asi digitálna kontrola, kde nebudeme môcť ísť z jednej časti mesta na druhú. No ale aby to nebol digitálny koncentrák nakoniec.
Can I have the mic, please?
No, tak ja si myslím, že
Hello? Can I have the mic? Okay. Okay, I understand.
I will enter this.
Okay.
What was the question? Čo bola otázka? Okay, this is the question.
Yeah.
What are the negative
Yeah,
outcomes?
I could,
we have to let them answer. This is not about us, it's about them. Okay? They are the main hosts today.
Okay, I understand the question. Of course, there are positive and negative experience during the process. So what we are presenting here is more the result after a period of time, of course. But I would like also to ask Peter and Carlos, during the whole process of implementing, using the concept and developing further, shaping the concept, what are the, let's say, the obstacles during the whole process? The obstacles, what are the things that you think, okay, during the whole process I have experienced this and this and this. So, but what we presented here is the final thing that we can share with you here, of course. Carlos, please.
Yes, we have two main obstacles. The first one is ourselves, to take another still life for saying that even if I am totally free for crossing my city, for going to the bakery, it's better to go in proximity because this is more pleasant. This is my local economy. This is my contribution as well for having a more happiness neighbor. My mindset was limited for a long time to consider that my freedom is my car. And to cross my city with a car during 1 hour is a soul of freedom. We need to consider that we could live differently because our cities now are unsustainable. A lot of pollution, CO2, fine particles. And the second obstacle is to offer as mayors to the citizens a roadmap for having more local activities, for avoiding to cross for 1 hour my city just for having a doctor, for having a cinema, for having a theater, for having a public space. I want to invite you to visit one of the 100 cities that have implemented this model.
Yeah.
All people is totally free.
Yeah.
Paris is a meraviglious city, totally open.
Yeah.
We don't have the limitations. We don't have the 5G chip in the brain for limiting. We don't need a local passport for crossing 10 minutes or 50 minutes after. We don't have any limitation.
Yeah.
We are totally free, but we have the extraordinary neighborhood open for all people. And this is the real feel of freedom.
Yeah, I remember your project. I forgot the name of the city in France. that, let's say, you have the schools, the schools where they transformed, let's say, the street into a park, where you also see now that elderly people also go for socializing. A few years back, you don't see elderly people, they feel lonely. And by implementing some elements in the context of the 15-minute city, and also related to the city law, elderly people have more chance not to stay in isolation, but get into interaction with others. I think that was a very good example in France, illustrating the positive side of this approach.
We have a lot of districts in this way. In Paris, we have 280 schools for kids. In front of this school, today, we don't have more cars. We have now 200 mini parks, open during the day, during the night, for people. We have the new districts with the green areas. We have a lot of bikeable lanes protected, 1,000 kilometers of bike lanes. We have the new centralities with the cinema, theaters, with the open air markets. We have the short circuits. We have the medical services in proximity. This is the natural life. This is the natural city. This is not a constrained city, this is a constrained life.
No, thank you very much for this example, because I saw that project. I was really happy with that. Peter, do you have an example, please?
Well, let me begin with the general remark. Everywhere where you bring people together, particularly in cities, there is always a conflict of interest, not at the individual level, but as soon as you enter public space, you have to deal with others. And whether this is car driving, whether this is parking, whether there's any other thing, there's always a conflict of interest. So without any regulation, we can never be happy, because we always have a fight with our neighbors. So that's why I think the questions raised by the two ladies sitting behind the city architect of Košice, the two ladies, thank you very much. I think you raised some very good questions, because there is no ideal city. A city is not a paradise. We need rules, and we need to regulate the system. And we have to suppress. One of the lady over there, she asked about the negatives. Well, of course, cities have negative elements, and we have to regulate them and cope with them. Otherwise, we would not create a happy society. Many examples where this can be done, of course. We have all over the world learned to cope with our neighbors. We do not like all our neighbors, but nevertheless we know there are rules, and whether this is on access to schools, whether there's access to universities, the use of medical facilities, use of hospitals, and many other things. No one has an absolute right in a city. A city is an organized system where people have to live and work together. And there are always negative externalities. That's why the 15-minute city came up, because it might affect quality of life. And there might be different ways to deal with quality of life. But in general, if you just look into recent results, also election results in Europe, whether it's European Parliament, whether there's recent elections in the UK or in France, there are some very simple arguments which are decisive. Safety, a good life, access to public goods, and a few other things. And gradually, of course, also climate neutrality, even though that is sometimes doubtful. But the best example, if I can give one...
Very short, Peter, because there are more questions, please.
Oh, yeah, okay, good.
Okay.
Then I stop, and I give the example later on.
Okay.
Let first the audience speak. Okay.
Of course, during some of the projects in the Netherlands, of course, there are some, how do you say that, miscommunication between different stakeholders, like the local policymakers, the residents, they do not communicate, even implementing a few elements in the context of 15-minute city for climate change or energy transition or creating sustainable tourism. There is friction between the different stakeholders. There are some problems, but during the implementation of different projects, we are using ambassadors. In each neighborhood, we have different ambassadors on different topics to create a kind of filter agent to help us to make things more understandable and of course to create partnership. I would like to ask Neil Reed from the US, what is your experience in this context or some elements? Neil.
Oh, thank you, Karima. Well, the United States is a very different context from most of what you have here in Europe, because we're such a, in many cities, an automobile-dependent society, and it's be a huge cultural and behavioral shift to move many Americans away from that. But I do have a question, if I could ask Peter and Carlos.
Yes.
We had COVID-19, and with the shift to more hybrid working from home, obviously it doesn't change the concept, but does the changes resulting from COVID-19, does that change any aspects of the implementation? Does it make it easier, harder, more challenging? Well, and because I think some of the changes which have come from COVID-19 are here to stay. So I'd be very interested to hear both your comments on that.
Thank you, Neil. That's fine. Okay. Carlos, very short, please.
Yes, with the COVID-19, in fact, we have three kind of impacts. The first one, a lot of people have learned to work differently by the remote technologies. In consequence, in particular, the young workers between 20 years old until 40 years old have a lot of appreciated to have more useful time, 1 hour, 2 hours. And this is one of the reasons for transforming radically the work style. A lot of people preferred to have 1 or 2 days. In France, today is 3 days of physical presence, 2 days of telecommuting, for using this useful time for other individual or social activities. Secondly, a lot of people have discovered the proximity, in particular with the neighbor. A lot of people have discovered neighbor. A lot of people have discovered the commerce in proximity. A lot of people have discovered the green areas in proximity. A lot of people have discovered that it exists a neighborhood. And this was today very, very present for implementing, for reclaiming more local services. The third point, during the COVID, a lot of people have suffered by the absence of the medical services in proximity. A lot of people died just because it was very long to go to the hospital and to wait a lot of time for having access to medical services. This was a very important point for a lot of mayors in order to offer more local services in proximity. This was the case in Paris, for example, for deploying more local medical services, generalists and other, in the territories with the low density for sending the medical trucks, the trucks for the mobile medical services, for offering this more local care. And this was 3 elements for fostering the popularity of the 15-minute city concept as proximity for more local services.
Thank you, Carlos. Peter, very short, because there are more questions.
Life is full of 15-minute cities ideas and realities. A personal revelation, when I started yesterday my trip to Košice, I first took 15 minutes on a bicycle from my home to the railway station.
Then I had to wait 15 minutes at the railway station because the train was 15 minutes late. Then I took 15 minutes by train to the airport, so all full of 15 minutes. And this morning I walked 15 minutes from the hotel to this place, etc., etc. So there is some sort of a regularity. But we should not overdo all these things, because there's one important thing which is important. Neil Reed mentioned COVID-19, and we had a natural experiment almost. We say, well, we don't need a car that much, we can work online, at home, etc. Interesting enough, nowadays, the traffic jams are more than ever before, even though people work more at home. Nevertheless, we have more traffic. How come? Very simple. There is some sort of an inbuilt psychological law, which is known as the law of Zahavi, which means essentially, on average, there is an inbuilt tendency of people to be out of the home, to be mobile, and on average, in almost any metropolitan area, the time volume used by people to be out on the road or en route somewhere is more than 1 hour, 1 hour, 15 minutes. On average, is a worldwide average. So what happens, even when you work at home, you say, well, that saves a lot of traffic. No, the traffic is still the same, because people then think, I have to do something. They want to be out, and at the end, car traffic is back to the level we had before, even though people work more at home. And that explains it, essentially the psychological drive. People want to be mobile, and that's why we have to be very intelligent in developing new concepts. And Košice could provide a very nice example of how to handle this drive for more mobility, maybe creating more green facilities. We have seen the river project this afternoon and so on. So there are many options, and I think, and I would hope that Košice also in Europe could provide a very nice, successful experiment how to handle, let's say, the beauty of the city together with the drive for some accessibility and mobility, because people do not want to sit all the time at home.
Thank you, Peter. We have a question over there.
Yes, hello. I have a question for Peter. So I would like, hello. I was curious to hear, what is your opinion on this correlation that is very often done between wealth and happiness? Because I finished my bachelor at Leiden University, which is the city that you mentioned. And as beautiful as it is, there's also huge wealth inequality. Is especially notorious for international students. It's very hard to find housing. And it is like a beautiful community place, but it's very expensive to live in also. So that's what I wanted to.
Yeah, very nice. I didn't know you were from the city of Leiden. It's apart from Košice, is the most beautiful city in Europe, of course. But yeah, in general, you see, there is again an inbuilt tendency of people to become rich. But if you look into the statistics, we did all the research, being wealthy does not mean you are necessarily happy. So again, there is some sort of an inverse U-shaped curve. If you are very poor, you are not very happy. If you are very rich, you are not very happy either, because you are puzzled all the time, how can I handle my wealth, etc. There's an optimal level of wealth, and that creates more or less an optimal level of happiness. So that also creates some sort of a balanced, let's say, socio-economic policy. The highly praised American market model, everyone should become a millionaire, etc., is not the best model from the happiness and well-being perspective, and certainly not from an environmental perspective.
Thank you, Peter. We have one more question.
Good evening. My name is Karina Domagała, and I'm from the sister city of Košice, from Rzeszów in Poland. And I wanted to ask, because Rzeszów is very similar to Košice. We are even very close in the happy index to Košice. And our mayor is telling our citizens about the 15-minute city in very open way. And I have to agree that it's very important to talk about the mindset and about the freedom. But we also have some problems with the 15-minute concepts, and we are, for example, talking with our citizens by preparing mini parks, bar cultural events, and so on. And that's why I wanted to ask, what do you think about the role of culture and about the role of art according to inviting citizens to this 15 minutes concept?
Well, I'm very happy to hear about the comparison between Jessof and Košice, because personally I have been working in Jessof for some time, so I know the city rather well. But the historical center and also the beautiful market square offers a lot of opportunities for not only entertainment, very nice in the evenings, but it also is a cultural center. And I'm very happy that you asked for where does culture come in. Any good city, in my view, would have a high level of cultural amenities. If we look into the work of Richard Florida and many other creative classes, arts and science, in combination are some of the welfare and well-being components of any city. So, and that holds for Košice, a beautiful city. And so I can just praise you because I've been in many cities in the world. A fantastic place. I've been here several times and it's beautiful to be back here. Jessof is a little bit similar and it's also beautiful to be back there. And I hope that all of us can come back to this great place. And I'm happy to have the vice mayor with us because the city is doing very well. Of course, we always are dissatisfied with the place where we live, but objectively the city is doing very well. So I'm very happy with what we see here. And of course, we would like to help you further in making and continuing this as a big success.
Thank you very much, Peter. So I just finished a paper with Saskia Sasser, and the paper was about should I stay or should I go? What is the X factor to keep people in the city? And with, in the context of the 15-minute city regarding accessibility to maximize the quality of life, the city loved to create a kind of not only city for people, but also people for city, because cities are, if there is a kind of city love level, it creates also loyalty. And based on all the researchers here, that we could develop this concept is evidence-based. So the things that we have doing through the whole process is we use different kinds of data. Of course, data of Bureau of Statistics, but also data on the perception of people. We went to different neighborhoods, different cities, and talked to many, many people about the perception regarding body and soul, accessibility, quality of life, etc. And what's really, really important is what is then the X factor? This concept illustrates also some ideas, not only from us, but also from people from all over the world. And it's important to also to see what is then the X factor. So what means for Košice doesn't mean for Amsterdam. What is important for Amsterdam doesn't mean necessary for Košice. So the X factor is undefined, but there is a kind of context and a framework. So that's important. And how you feel it, of course, there are people that do not agree, people that are not happy, but to find a kind of X factor based on partnership, you find a kind of compromise between the different stakeholders that could also invest in the city. It's not only city for people that the city needs to produce and provide everything, it's also that people could invest and have the space and opportunity to look into the future. How can I build further? So should I stay or should I go? It's a very important question also in the context of the X factor. Catherine?
Well, no, just to finish, we want to thank you for being with us today, tonight, those 2 hours, to all the organization partners. It was a lot of information in English, we understand. Thank you to the translator, who I'm sure did a great job. It's our life. It's what we like to do in life, to study cities. We love cities everywhere. We also love freedom. So if there is a single doubt about the fact that the research we do and the vision we have is that cities should be free for everyone, and there is no question that there will never be any ghetto passwords or whatever to be out of your city. But the reality is that here, in this environment, it looks like you have a very balanced access to most of the functions we talked about. It's not the case in many of the other cities. And so you have to take into consideration that the cities have become places where you get sick because the air is polluted. People are isolated, they sometimes really suffer for very deep depression. And so that's what we like to do, to researching the best conditions to increase the quality and also the freedom and the happiness. I think there was the word love somewhere this evening on some slide. It's what we want to have, desirable cities where people can really be happy and can enjoy things with their families. Thank you very much.
There is food prepared, but before we move to other place, we have to say several notes. For us, it was really great to see that sometimes we can be so academic that some of the words are tough to translate to the common language. This is really great knowledge. On the other hand, I have to say, we are living in a country that are walking towards not democratic values. So let's be glad that we still can have open discussions and we can argue in public. This is something that we have to cheer, even if there are people of different opinions. It's given by democracy that we can do this. So we don't have to agree, but we have to listen to others, because especially in this country is not guaranteed for the foreseeable future. So let's keep that. Let's keep that. I want to really warmly thank to all of our speakers, because what they didn't come just to pop up for one day or for one event. They're staying here for a whole week because their commitment to our city is much, much, much stronger than we can anticipate. Peter Nijkamp, Carlos Moreno, Catherine Gall, Karima Kourtit, thank you so much that you are here. Please, let's gather here. Let's gather here. I was personally and directly told that not to do that, and we did it once by me and second time by Mr. Deputy Mayor. We would like to thank you to Mr. Professor Otto Hudec, and yes, you have to come here to us, because this is happening mainly because of you. I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that. And I think we could do this, because they are also important. So please come with me here. Is there anybody with phone or camera here? Yeah. Let's do this like this Matthew McConaughey did this nice picture on the Oscars. Yeah. So but with them. We have to be like. Yeah. Let's do this. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. Food and drinks are prepared in a hall right next to us. Please enjoy your time here. All our guests, but also people from the city, from the region, are staying here. Keep them in touch. Ask them some questions, formal, informal. We are staying here till 9, so if there was something you wanted to ask and you were so shy, now it's the option to do it.